because that's exactly what we want to do. Have people believe in us by trusting us, by like having that human authentic connection instead of just we're offering you something for you to use and then not caring. Well, I hope people don't see AI as this assumption of, well, I don't need that interpersonal connection anymore. Because I think that through those interpersonal connections, you have the best conversations that you can't have with AI. I think that as we get more familiar with the use of AI, we understand that, like, yes, it provides us answers, but it doesn't provide us like context that sometimes conversations can have. The learning community in the age of AI. That's such an interesting question.
Interesting. And then, of course, once you go through the steps that you're going to build the connection with your communities, when do you really feel that, okay, now I'm connected with the, you mentioned how you integrated Spanish and translations in order to reach out to the students that need your organization in a certain area. I'm sure that you have done maybe something similar with other communities. So when you build those connections, in addition to translation, have you integrated other steps? And what does it mean for your organization to have that, I would say, connection with the heart?
Yeah. I want to go ahead and say this. Within our like organization, we have this like running like joke. Where's Richard? He's our CEO because Richard travels all over the world. He visits schools that are using our products. He visits schools that are like, looking to bring in our work into what they do. And sometimes he like, during we have our a couple months ago we had our colo meeting, which is like within our organization, and he brought in students, and he's like showing like the students are showing how they're integrating what we do in their learning, and that was very interesting because I think that that's something that we all need to see our our work in action, and seeing like Richard when he travels be our face and who represents what we do is really impactful because he's able to go ahead and build those connections that people crave, those interpersonal connections, being able to be listened to by the person that's designing the things that we're using in our school, in our classroom, what our students are learning. And that is so important. That's so like special because that's exactly what we want to do. Have people believe in us by trusting us, by like having that human authentic connection instead of just we're offering you something for you to use and then not caring whether you use it correctly or not. So him being present in those spaces, it's very important, and it's inspiring, because it makes you believe that like, you know your work is your work is you know I feel like it makes you believe that your work is of importance to the person that's the leadership of your organization, and it makes you feel like we're all working collaboratively, from designer to learner to face to brand ambassador to make sure that what our work does is authentic to the needs of the educational world, you know.
That is so interesting. So, in the end of the day, it's all about personal touch.
Yes.
And I'm going to say, in this case, literally personal connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so your organization goes back before pandemic, and you guys were working on resolving this crisis of pandemic. What? How did it all started? How did it all start? How did you come with this idea that, well, this is the problem, technology is something that will need special assistance in education, and we are the ones who are going to be resolving it?
Yeah, so going back to that, what I said earlier about the ISTE standards, and the ever-changing need of technology, the computer was the integral piece to it, like,
It all goes back
yeah,
to basics,
to basic
computer,
computer.
and now we are
Yeah,
at
we're
AI.
with AI,
Yes.
and what our company did is it's designing products and services to specifically cater to those needs.
Mm-hmm.
Through the pandemic, it was more on the aspect of community. You know, the online community.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that was the greatest takeaway after the pandemic. You know, some schools didn't go back into the classroom for months, you know, even after things were opening up. And even to this day, there's still people that prefer a virtual world. Like I meet with leaders from all over the
Mm-hmm.
world that they say we're still in a hybrid setup where they only come to the school 1 day a week. The rest of the days are virtual, you know? And what their need is how we need help with that virtual structure, you know? And with ISTE+ASC, what we do with our work is how can we assist you with that? You know, how are we designing products, services that are specifically catering to those needs, whether that is like you being like guided on how to build online community, or whether that is how are you instilling, you know, learning needs into like the tech standards essentially, or whether that is like, you know, you learning a skill like AI and the integration of AI in your work, you know? It's about assisting the learning needs in this world of learning that we live in, you know? And I think that that's one thing that like ISTE does so well, which is listening to, you know, educators around the world and what their needs are so that we can go ahead and assist them.
So now that I'm listening to you, if you can give us maybe 3 to 5 highlights on what it what would we need to create or to be successful to create online learning community, I should say. What are those ingredients for success?
Engagement is
Mm-hmm.
a big piece. You know, I think engagement is the what draws you in to learn. You know, whether you're designing activities that are engaging for students, whether that is what they're learning is of purpose or of meaning, that's going to go ahead and draw people in. The second is understanding that technology is a facilitator to learning, you know? You don't have to teach to the computer to be able to learn. You can integrate videos, post them together, and that's your learning content, you know? Students could go ahead and watch that on the go 5 hours later. They don't have to physically be in front of the screen to be able to get the ideas that you want to go ahead and learn. That is one of the things that I learned through the pandemic, you know? Changing the way you see learning. Learning doesn't have to be instantly, it could be put on pause and pick up later, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That is one thing that I think I learned. And then the last piece is community. Those making sure that those instances and opportunities of interaction are meaningful. You know, what is it you're gaining from that conversation with someone?
How do you see the community learning community online and in person combination of the future, provided all this integration of AI and different technologies that emerging today?
Yeah, um, the learning community in the age of AI. That's such an interesting question, just because, like I said, it's like you don't know what AI can do, because what AI could do today, 5 years ago, we were like, oh, never thought about it, you know? And I think that in the future, I hope people don't distance themselves from face-to-face communication and just solely rely on one individual for all their content. I hope it AI doesn't like have this. I mean, I hope people don't see AI as this assumption of, well, I don't need that interpersonal connection anymore, because I think that through those interpersonal connections you have the best conversations that you can't have with AI, you know? And maybe that is what happens. I think that as we get more familiar with the use of AI, we understand that, like, yes, it provides us answers, but it doesn't provide us like context that sometimes conversations can have, you know? For example, like you and I talking right now,
Right.
I'm not going to have that with AI, you know, because personal experiences you're not going to get from AI, you know, interpersonal connections you're not going to get from AI. And I think that um, people will be like, well, I don't have to go ahead and ask people anymore because AI has that. But AI doesn't have the life experiences that you might have. It doesn't have the questions that you do. You're asking AI questions. AI isn't giving you like that feedback in return. So like it's I think that's where like that aspect of community isn't really going to go away. I think it's going to be used in a sense of I'm there for interpersonal connections and looking for validation in that and looking for AI as the fact checking like aspect of questioning, you know, and the inquisitive like nature of learning.